Thank you, and please be seated. Welcome to the 2022 Spring Commencement Ceremony for Interdisciplinary Studies. My name is Dr. Blair Kelly. I'm a professor in the Department of History, and I have the honor of serving as Assistant Dean for Interdisciplinary Studies and International Programs for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. If you don't know what interdisciplinary studies is, we make up 6 major programs, 10 minors, 3 dual degree honors programs, and the Master of Arts in Liberal Studies here at the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. Our faculty represent some of the very first people and programs innovating interdisciplinary education here at NC State. With more than 450 students majoring in Africana Studies, Art Studies, International Studies, Science, Technology, and Society, Self-Design, and Women's and Gender Sexuality Studies, and an additional 150 students minoring in 8 programs. Together, our students make up the 4th largest undergraduate course of study here in our college. We partner with faculty across campus and the Triangle area on new and innovative programming for our courses, our students, our campus, and community. We are proud to be guiding students to think and do for North Carolina, for the nation, and the world. We are so honored to have several members of our faculty community in interdisciplinary studies here with us today. I'd like to ask our program directors, coordinators, faculty who are here with us to stand and to introduce themselves. Please mention your name, your program, and your role.
Jonathan Kramer, Music and Art Studies.
Nora Hahn, International Studies.
Karen Young, Interim Associate Dean of Undergraduate Academic Affairs.
Jason Delborn, the Director of the Science, Technology, and Society Program.
Carol Ann Leewald, Director of Undergraduate Advising for Interdisciplinary Studies and Professor in International Studies.
Julie West, Professor in Science, Technology, and Society Program.
Alicia McGill, Director of the Self-Design Program.
I'm Seth Murray, and I direct the International Studies Program.
I'm Carrie Harwood, and I'm the coordinator for Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies.
Michael Garvel, I direct the Master of Arts in Liberal Studies Program.
Tori Ralston, I'm the coordinator of visual arts for Art Studies.
Allison Arnold in Arts Studies and Music.
Tatiana Robinovich, postdoctoral scholar in IDS.
Heidi Yai, faculty in the International Studies Program.
I'm Rodney Washka. I'm the Director of Arts Studies.
I'm Bob Patterson. I'm formerly in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, but I'm right where I want to be today in your precious college. I'm adjunct in the college of this program, and I'm just so happy to be here. And I teach a course in the Science, Technology, Society, World Population, and Food Prospect. It's a joy to be here this evening.
Thank you all so much. You may be seated. On behalf of our esteemed faculty and staff, I'd like to say a big congratulations to our graduates. You've not only proven that you have the discipline to think critically, conduct research, write convincingly, and put together dynamic presentations, you've also had the wisdom to have chosen a major that has challenged you to think about, ask, and answer hard questions. And through your hard work, you've gained the skills you need to conquer any task you might be asked to do in the future. At our commencements in the past, I used to talk about the value of critical thinking you've earned here in IDS. I'd say that some folks think that the only lessons universities need to teach are how to perform certain tasks, complex sets of skills, and that if you didn't walk away with the university with those sets of skills, disciplinary skills like accounting or engineering, then your degree doesn't have value. Then I'd normally make the case that the world does change dramatically with time. I would give examples from my own life that are pretty funny, so I'm going to share them anyway. The first was that when I graduated college in 1995, a mobile phone was the size of a suitcase. It only worked sporadically. It had no camera, no apps, nothing. It was just a phone. And it had the ability to call other people on landlines, because most phones were landlines. And it had to be plugged into my car's lighter at all times, or it wouldn't work. Thus, it was a little less than actually mobile. There were no laptop computers. You didn't bring your laptop when you went to college. You brought a Brother word processor if your mom really liked you. And that's what I had when I went to college. It was a very fancy typewriter with a little tiny screen. So you could type maybe 3 sentences at a time. It was cutting edge technology. When I graduated and took pictures, the camera required film and a place for the film to be developed, and all our pictures were not as cute as your pictures because we couldn't see what we looked like for weeks. And don't get me started on the internet, because it didn't really exist. I graduated before dial-up, but I'm not even that old, I swear. But now, the class of 2022 no longer needs an example from my past to prove how the world changes dramatically. You've all just gone through college, and one of the most dynamic moments for change in a century. Few of us have had the capacity to even imagine the challenges that now exist in our world because of a global public health crisis. That all of your classes would be briefly virtual, as would your shopping, even some of your recreation. That we wear masks or conduct home tests for infection. And yet, here we are, on this other side of a newly challenging world. You now know that we don't need to be proven the point that the world will be different than what we even expect in 20 years. The story of your journey at State is proof of the need for interdisciplinarity. Our talented faculty has taught you graduates to think and do whatever comes your way in the future. More than ever, we know that society needs people who can address the grand challenges of our world. And today, we have those challenges, and tomorrow we'll have them too. And that's what you graduates have been preparing to do this whole time. We are fortunate that you've been here in interdisciplinary studies, where you've learned to read, to analyze emerging patterns, to communicate to diverse audiences, to interpret scientific discoveries to everyday people, to create, to present and preserve art. All of these things are very vital, and we discovered them anew over the past few years while you were in school. You'll carry those crucial and flexible skills with you to whatever situation you face next. The world is lucky to have you. We know that today's graduates have done so much to get here. They have what folks now call grit. They made it through something really challenging. We know today's graduates will make an impact because you already made such an impact on NC State, adapting and succeeding in challenging times. 65 of today's graduates are graduating with honors. 7 of you have a GPA, and this is not something I had, of 4.0. 32 of you are double majors. I was in that club. That's a cool club. 5 of you are university scholars. 3 of you are University Honors Program students. There's a Franklin Scholar, 7 Hamilton Scholars, a Jefferson Scholar, a Caldwell Fellow, and 2 Park Scholars in our graduating class. But beyond those traditional accolades, our graduates are dynamic individuals. Someone in this group designed their own course of study. Someone studied abroad in Iceland, in Morocco, in China, in Prague. One of you traveled to South Korea. One of you paid for yourself all the way through school and is done. One of you is getting ready to be an officer in the Marine Corps. Another led their service-based sorority. Another presented their scholarship in Finland. Many of today's graduates are on their way to master's or PhD programs. One of these graduates founded their own nonprofit and led a statewide conference just a few days ago. One of today's graduates bought their own house last year. Pretty impressive. Our graduates have rescued turtles, won awards, published scholarship, set track and field records for NC State 5 times. Our graduates have been campus leaders, directed films, attended archaeology field schools. One of our graduates is going to be a Navy officer. Another is joining the 82nd Airborne. You've exhibited your art. One of you has excellent credit. I think that's really great. I hope a few more. You've released your music. You've curated an exhibit. You've hosted a virtual symposium. You've learned Italian. You got a good job. We are all so proud of what you've already done, and we can't wait to see all that you will do with what you've learned. Please keep us posted. Today is a day that we recognize your accomplishments and reflect on your achievements. We've asked 2 extraordinary speakers to share their insights with us before we award your degrees. Our faculty speaker is Dr. Rob Dunn, Interim Senior Vice Provost for University Interdisciplinary Programs, Professor of Applied Ecology and in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Rob is trained as an ecologist and evolutionary biologist. His research has focused on the biology of everyday life, whether it be the microbes in our homes, the ecology of fermented foods, the evolution of face mites, or the behavior and movement of domestic cats. He has written 7 books, most recently, A Natural History of the Future, which draw insights from many disciplines, as does his research. His work on sourdough bread, for example, involves engineers, ecologists, evolutionary biologists, historians, artists, literary theorists, and even a theologian. Welcome, Dr. Rob Dunn.
Thank you, Blair, and thank you all. It's an honor to be here today. At this time, 26 years ago, give or take, I was seated in chairs like those you're sitting in, getting ready to graduate from a college in Western Michigan. I'd gone to college thinking I might be an economist, but then I met biologists and realized I was a biologist at heart, at least for a while, because later I also met an amazing poetry professor and realized I was a writer. Then, yet later I began to obsessively take art classes and realized that I was definitely, probably an artist. On hopeful days, I knew I was all of those things. But the world demanded that I choose, or at least I felt that the world was making such a demand. I started graduate school in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Connecticut, but I kept writing and I kept doing art. Sometimes my passions mixed. I carved giant clay sculptures of tapeworms. I wrote poems about snakes. More often, my interests remained separate, unwoven threads of my life. Fortunately, I had a graduate advisor who didn't give me any trouble when he found my poems printing out of the laboratory printer, or when unwittingly I left red clay stains in the clean laboratory floor of my shoes. As a graduate student in ecology and evolutionary biology, I was sending out book proposals to poetry publishers. I was also selling clay tapeworm sculptures. Some journals bought some of my poems. Some of my friends, many of whom at the time were tapeworm biologists, bought the tapeworms. No one bought my poetry books. But I also started writing essays. I loved and loved creative nonfiction writing. I'd grown up reading essays in the magazine Natural History. I tried my hand at this style of writing, but it wasn't quite working. Truthfully, it wasn't working at all. The articles were poetic, but they were boring. I was missing something. In retrospect, I know what was missing was a plot, or anything at all that happened. Then I was invited to travel to help a professor who I'd actually thought was dead until he popped out of a small office and asked me to join him on a trip. He wasn't dead, he was just retired. I went with him to Costa Rica to look for a species of beetle that rides on some subterranean army ants in the middle of the night as they run through and under the forest. The beetle had only been seen once before in 1967 and never again. This was a real job. That was a good response. We searched for the ants for weeks, but didn't find them. Finally, we found them, but then just when we were ready to dig the ants up and look for the beetle, the ants disappeared deep into some recess of the earth. We never found them again. We also never found the beetle. As far as I know, no one has ever seen it again. I came back from the trip and realized I had a story. And this was a story with action and drama and human failure. It was the kind of story that my grandfather had told me as a child, a story in which humans confront nature and nature wins. I knew how to write it. And so I did. Then I submitted it to Natural History magazine, the magazine I read for years with pleasure and admiration. Amazingly, an editor there was interested. What I didn't know until later is that the editor didn't think it was a good essay, but instead one that had promise, which was probably what you could have said about my career at that moment. She did me a favor. 12 rounds of edits later, the article was published in Natural History magazine. Having published the article, I developed the very mistaken idea that one could just send essays or short stories to magazines and that they would publish them. It would prove more difficult than that, but eventually I would begin to publish essays regularly. Then I published a book called Every Living Thing. That book included a version of that first article I wrote about the beetle riding the ants. Fast forward, and now at this point in my career, I've written hundreds of articles and 7 books. All these years after graduating college, I finally just barely feel comfortable saying I'm both a writer and a scientist. And as for the poetry, I stopped it for a while. But just this week began a correspondence with a poet who's going to visit my lab so we can collaborate on a new project. In a twist of fate I couldn't possibly have predicted, I just learned today that this particular poet, Karen Anderson, was married to her partner by one of the same tapeworm biologists to whom I gave the sculpture. What I've discovered is that time and persistence can turn disparate passions into opportunities. And this will be true for you. But I also discovered something else. When I would go to give talks around the world, scientists would come up to me after talks and sheepishly tell me about their own writing. I've been handed an extraordinary number of unpublished novels by scientists, many of them romances, and unpublished books of poems. In every department, there seem to be scientists who are also writers, scientists whose love of words is as deep as their love of scientific discoveries. Not all of them are good writers, but many are, and so too there are writers who find deep joy in science, many of them. Interdisciplinary people are everywhere around us, and they're full of passion and joy. They're great people to be around, as you all know. But even as my writing was succeeding, my art was missing. Not missing, but hidden. Like those secret novels the professors I met were writing. I still spent many, many hours a year in art museums, and off and on, I also continued to do sculptures. I still had an art obsession, but it was private. Then one year, my family and I were staying in the town of Delft in the Netherlands for a month or so while I worked on a research project. I was studying the connections between the scientist Anton van Leeuwenhoek and the artist Johannes Vermeer, the painter of the famous Girl with the Pearl Earring, The Milkmaid, and many other light-filled daily scenes. In Delft, we stayed in a beautiful little house with one major disadvantage. It was entirely glass-walled and had no curtains. This was entirely not popular with my wife. It was a bit like being on a reality TV show, but where just the neighbors were watching. And under most circumstances, we probably would have found a way to move elsewhere. However, we discovered that this very house was situated on the farm that used to belong to Vermeer's aunt, an aunt that was important to his story. And in the garage that belonged to the home were bones and ceramics that had been excavated from the farm, including pieces of a pitcher, very much like the one out of which Vermeer's milkmaid pours milk. We stayed, and more important to my story today, I felt motivated to find new ways to re-engage art. The world seemed to be offering me a message via pitcher. At this point, I'd hosted one artist in my lab, but I decided to begin an artist in residence program. We'd host an artist or two each year. Sometimes the artist and scientist in the lab would work in parallel, like parallel play with little kids, connecting over conversation but not collaborating. But with time, we began to find ways to collaborate. And as we did, what I found was that having the artists in my lab invigorated our research. The artists asked questions we didn't think to ask. They asked questions we were scared to ask. And they pulled us along. The artists quickly made our science better, and as they did, I suddenly found myself working on art installations with artists around the world. A giant installation called Co-Metabolism in Copenhagen, a performance piece in Times Square in New York City, an installation in England built around a series of fictional dialogues between different microbe species. I pulled my passions together, science, art, and writing, so as to do things that were impossible to do from any one of those fields on their own. I'm convinced that each of my passions makes the other better. My science makes me a better writer, my writing makes me a better scientist, my collaborations with artists make me better at both science and writing. And as I reflect on the road that brought me here, I'm very aware that it depended in key moments on people who thought that my mix of obsessions was not ridiculous. Your trajectory has also no doubt depended on those moments. I didn't necessarily need those people to be supportive. I just needed them to be forbearant. I needed them to give me the space to become who I am, or at least who I am right now. With this reality very much in mind, this year I was asked to step into a role at NC State, a new role, the role I now have, the role of finding creative ways to ensure that the work we do on campus is interdisciplinary. My current job is to make it even easier for people like you to pull your passions into a hole through which you can begin to change the world. It is a joyful responsibility. And so as I look out upon all of you, graduates who are so much better prepared than I was at your stage, graduates with more than one obsession, more than one thing that wakes you up in the middle of the night, I can tell you that the world has space enough for you to find jobs in which you can do each of the things you love. It might not happen all at once, but your lives will be forever enriched by the ways in which your curiosity leads you to want more than one kind of person, to know more than one kind of thing. Your curiosity spills over the easy categories into which we divide the world, mine too. In thinking about this, I'm reminded of one of the last conversations I had with my grandfather. He read an article about dark matter and didn't understand the article. It was my job as the family scientist to explain dark matter to him, no matter that I was a biologist, not an astrophysicist. I tried my best. When I was done, he looked up at me and said, "I don't think I will ever understand it all." And yet he came back to me later that same day with more questions about dark matter. He was going to keep trying. I wish upon you lives in which you are able to engage your diverse interests. You will find that those interests make you better able to contribute meaningfully to the world, but also better able to find pleasure in the world. And I also wish you continuing curiosity, the sort of curiosity that is, by its very nature, interdisciplinary. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to go read a little bit more about dark matter. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Carol Ann Leetwald, IDS Director of Undergraduate Advising and Teaching Associate Professor of International Studies, forward to introduce our student speaker.
Welcome and congratulations to everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Cortland Hardy, the Spring 22 Interdisciplinary Studies graduation speaker. While Cortland's achievements have been really impressive, he is graduating summa cum laude. He's a double major in science, technology, and society, and criminology, and as well he has a forensics minor, and he almost had a minor in ethics. He was president of NC State's National Society of Leadership and Society. He's a PAC Promise Scholar, and he was a distinguished recipient of the Dean's Board Scholarship from the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And while all of that is impressive, what really stands out to me about Cortland aren't just these accomplishments. What stands out to me most about Cortland Hardy are the things that aren't immediately visible. Those facets of his life, experiences, career plans that are not necessarily always apparent to those who meet him. Cortland is positive, he's passionate, honest, unbelievably hardworking. He's humble and grateful. I've never known him not to show some level of gratitude no matter what was going on in his life. He is an advocate for those in need, and he believes in justice. And I don't mean justice in just conceptual ways. He believes in justice as a career path, as a way to treat other human beings. He does not give up. And believe me, he's faced enough things in his life that deserved some level of giving up, and I've never known him to even come close. He is from rural North Carolina and a first-generation student, so the first in his family to graduate from college. He has struggled. Sorry, I'm gonna get choked out myself. And I don't cry, so, I didn't cry when my kids graduated. Not that I attended, they graduated during COVID, so I was spared. He has struggled with profound financial insecurity, health concerns, homelessness, and a host of other issues while in college. Yet, again, I have never seen any resignation in Cortland Hardy. I faced every single challenge with grit and determination. But the funny thing is, when I met Cortland 4 years ago in July at orientation, I met him, and the first thing that stood out, aside from the fact that he speaks very quickly, is that he was concerned about not accepting the scholarship that was offered him and not attending NC State. He had found out about his mother's illness, needed to care for her, care for his brother Landon, whose name I will never forget, by the way. He was concerned that he couldn't do all of this and complete his degree. But as we spoke, the other thing that stood out was he began speaking about his interests. He began talking about forensics, the FBI, what he wanted to do with his life. And I believe it wasn't even the FBI at the time, I believe it was the Army, and then it was the police, and then it was criminology, it was biology, it was the sciences, but not the sciences, it was society. And what I knew most clearly was that he belonged in college, he belonged in interdisciplinary studies, and he was clearly a science, technology, and society major. It was very shortly after that he did enroll, that he did follow up on these options. And immediately, I was clear how much of an impact he was going to make, not only on my lives, but on others that he met in this school. So despite the number of disciplines in his interests, I was really, really certain that he did have this very clear vision, which he'll share with you a little bit of tonight. For me, Cortland Hardy embodies the value of an interdisciplinary studies major in an interdisciplinary education. Those invisible experiences that informed his decisions, to me, deserve to be highlighted. And I am so honored to introduce him as our evening's graduation speaker. So please welcome Cortland Hardy.
Good evening. My name is Cortland Hardy, and as you now know, I'm an NC State senior double majoring in STS and criminology with a minor in forensic science. Tonight, I'm here to represent IDS as a graduating STS major. STS looks at how science and technology intersect, how they both independently and jointly interact with society in areas such as economics, domestic policy, international relations, and how they both are impacted through social interactions, how society changes through their impact. Criminology looks at the causes of crime, how to address crime and the prevention of crime, as well as the parts of the criminal justice system commonly referred to as police, courts, and corrections. Lastly, forensic science looks at how scientific principles and methodology from multiple scientific fields are jointly applied to aid in criminal investigations. I've known ever since I was little that I wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement, specifically forensic science, hence why I double majored in STS and criminology, as that educational trifecta was and truly has been perfect for me and my dreams. It's hard to believe, but roughly 4 years ago, as I was graduating from Surrey Early College High School, all I could think about was being lucky enough to make it to NC State, so I applied. Fast forward several weeks, I received a massive envelope package from NC State, and I stuffed it away on the kitchen counter where it was initially overlooked as I was dealing with a family emergency that pulled me away from my NC State college dreams. It was about this time that I found my mom laying in the kitchen floor in critical condition after she hemorrhaged due to stage 4 cervical cancer. When I was little, my mom worked 3 jobs and went back to school to support myself and my younger brother Landon. As such, she couldn't afford yearly checkups, hence why her cancer got so bad before we found it. Later, with my mom still in the hospital, I went home. This was day 3, 4, 5 of being in the hospital to grab some clothes and head back. But I stopped when I saw that packet from NC State on the counter. I opened it and nearly dropped it, speechless and shocked that I had received a full-ride scholarship to NC State. I filled it out real hastily, declining my scholarships, stuffed it back in the package, closed it all up. I decided I was going to stay and support my mom after all her years of selflessly supporting my brother and I, which she still does today. Thank you, Mom. Days later, when my mom and I came home from the hospital, she found that package, because I didn't stuff it in the mailbox, and realized how I put it out. She admittedly got really mad at me and told me I had to take this opportunity, as it would be the only way I'd ever go to college, and that she would be just as sick with me either by her side or hours away at school in Raleigh, but that only the later option would ensure my success in life. As a first-generation low-income college student, looking back, I know my mom was right, and I'm so glad that I decided to accept my scholarship and this amazing opportunity. When I came to NC State 4 years ago, I split myself between my academics, work, and homework. During my time at NC State, through my work study, I served as a teacher's assistant at Broughton High School, pedaling 4 miles a day to serve students there. Interestingly enough, I was a co-teacher for forensic science elective there. That worked out well. After serving there for a year, the principal said, "You have a knack for education," and wanted me to become a substitute teacher. So at 19, I became the youngest substitute teacher in the nation's 13th largest school district. I subbed for another 2 years, and this year I was promoted to an instructional assistant for a local elementary school's intellectual disabilities severe 2 class, where I'm still employed. Like my graduating peers, and Dr. Lawald briefly introduced, I've experienced my own ups and downs, such as living out of my car for a while when COVID first hit and shut down the campus, but I still had students to take care of at work. However, like my graduating peers, I thought and did and simply refused to be overcome with my challenges while at NC State, and eventually I was able to be hosted by a local family until my summer break. Other things I've done during my time here at State is serve as the Vice President and Chapter President for the NC State National Society of Leadership and Success Chapter, While serving the NC State Untitled Chapter, I've personally oversaw over 1,400 member joins, with over 80% of those joined members being inducted into our National Honor Society roll. Every member I've personally engaged with has always said that it's been a positive, life-changing experience for them in more ways than one, and I'm glad to have been able to be a part of providing that. While at NC State, I've also been able to further my law enforcement career by completing a semester-long internship right here on campus with the North Carolina State University Police Department. Through this internship, I've had some amazing experiences, such as patrol ride-alongs, late night to boot, 5 p.m. to midnight, so those are always fun. I've worked with dispatchers in the university's Emergency Communications Center. I've observed the investigation process, sit in on interrogations. My favorite internship experience was observing a part of a case investigation wherein an officer was studying camera footage and other records from the university to track the recent physical history of a crime victim with the goal of identifying a suspect in that crime. Without delving into particulars, the victim was assaulted outside of a parking garage, but it was in a blind zone of the cameras, so we had to throw out a web and track down the suspect. In the end, by piecing together camera footage and over a dozen cameras, using law enforcement artificial intelligence, such as automated license plate reader technology, the officer was able to determine how the victimization happened and identify a suspect that was later apprehended. This internship was one of the most impactful applications of my STS degree to date, as I was able to apply multiple scientific concepts, such as the scientific investigation processes and methodologies, and multiple technological concepts, such as working with vast databases and law enforcement artificial intelligence, to key societal concerns, such as crime. Furthermore, I was able to see how not only these sciences and technologies impacted society in this instance, via solving and reducing crime, but I also saw how society impacts these sciences and technologies via some members of the general public commenting on when and where and how they feel comfortable with the deployment of such technology on campus, which I can say the NC State Police Department does take into account. My favorite STS moment to date illustrates the impact and importance of my STS degree is the recent completion of my STS senior capstone research paper wherein I studied a specific science and technology topic, law enforcement artificial intelligence. I researched and analyzed facial recognition, gunshot detection systems, social media and internet archival evidence analysis and mapping, and surveillance and tracking drones. I researched and considered accuracy, privacy, legal concerns, racial profiling, discrimination, and bias of such law enforcement artificial intelligence. Such IDS capstone projects are the perfect conclusions to students' studies and serve as an invaluable connection between their education and their career field. Through IDS and my STS degree, I have learned not only about science and technology, which are both core components for a forensic science career, but also about society, which is important in not only applying forensics, but also in the law enforcement field as a whole. I've already been able to apply a lot from IDS and my STS degree in the law enforcement field through my internship. I know that as I continue pursuing my law enforcement forensic science career this summer by completing basic law enforcement training and further forensic science certifications, what I've learned here at the state as an IDS student will continue to serve and be invaluable to me. I am forever indebted to IDS and to our wonderful faculty and staff to my right, and their unique dual breadth and depth focus for laying these critical foundations for my law enforcement forensic science career, which have already given me a unique advantage in my field. I would like to take a moment to wish everyone from the Interdisciplinary Studies faculty and staff to all family and friends present here in the crowd tonight, as well as all of my graduating peers before me, nothing but the very best in all of their future endeavors. I know that my fellow graduates will be embarking on their own life journeys very shortly, but Interdisciplinary Studies and NC State will always hold a special place in all of our hearts. Let's give everyone a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Jason Delborn, Director of Science, Technology, and Society, and Professor of Forestry, Environmental Resources, and Genetic Engineering and Society in the College of Natural Resources, to come forward.
Good evening. Each semester, the Interdisciplinary Studies Faculty Council names a graduating senior as the Bob Patterson Interdisciplinary Studies Fellow. The student is chosen for their strong scholastic record, generosity, empathy, humility, open-mindedness, creativity, altruism, and gratitude. These are all characteristics of Dr. Bob Patterson. He's over there. First, a word about Bob. Bob has had a remarkable career at NC State. He began with a bachelor's degree in soil science here in 1963. And while he spent some time away from us, earning his PhD in agronomy at Cornell, he returned to NC State to do important research in crop physiology, soil fertility, and plant nutrition. Bob cares about feeding people, reducing hunger, and doing so in ways that are sustainable ecologically and socially. Bob is not a narrow thinker, nor is he the kind of professor who thinks he has all the answers and just needs to download his brain into unsuspecting undergraduates. Instead, Bob is curious, he is warm, he is desperate to find ways to expand students' views of the world in ways that will help them grow and become compassionate problem solvers. Empathy, generosity, humility, open-mindedness, creativity, altruism, and gratitude. These are the characteristics that Bob Patterson teaches and embodies. On behalf of the IDS Council, I am pleased to announce the Spring 2022 winner of the Bob Patterson Award, Abdullah Antabli. This is news to him too. Abdullah was nominated independently by two of our IDS faculty, Nora Hahn and Elizabeth Saylor. Abdullah graduates today with a BA in Foreign Languages and Literature with a concentration in Arabic Studies. Abdullah grew up in Damascus, Syria. His mother was part of Syria's diplomatic corps and became a US citizen while posted in Washington, DC, also creating the opportunity for Abdullah and his father to become US citizens. In 2014, Abdullah was just beginning his first semester at a university in Damascus, having won a prestigious fellowship to study international law. But Syria's civil war caused his family to flee to the US, specifically North Carolina on the recommendation of a relative, I understand. When he arrived in Raleigh, Abdullah knew very little English, yet determined to pursue an education. He enrolled at Wake Tech and poured his energy into his studies. 2 years later, he transferred to NC State, where he has continued to excel academically and socially, all while working full-time to support himself and his family. Dr. Nora Hahn. In her nomination letter, Dr. Nora Hahn wrote that Abdullah's is an American dream story, and that he is energetic and vivacious. Elizabeth Saylor writes, quote, "Wherever he goes, Abdullah naturally makes meaningful connections with others across continents, languages, and cultures. He dreams of building bridges between the United States and the Arabic-speaking world through international diplomacy. He is incredibly hardworking, academically top-notch, and possesses a natural leadership in the classroom." Abdullah led an Arabic reading group as an independent study in fall 2021. Elizabeth writes, "I was thrilled by Abdullah's work that semester. Not only did he select an inspired set of literary texts to present to the group, but he devised creative pedagogical strategies that allowed him to effectively teach them to Arabic students at all levels. Abdullah is an extremely gifted teacher who brings kindness, patience, respect, and an open heart to his students." We are grateful for people like Abdullah and Bob Patterson. They remind us of what is possible, even when it seems improbable. They show us the humility that is at the core of greatness, and they shine a light for all of us to see how we can make a difference in our world. Please join me in congratulating Abdullah Antabli, the Spring 2022 Bob Patterson Interdisciplinary Fellow.
Congratulations. And now for the awarding of the degrees. First, there's a bit of housekeeping I'd like to explain. Bruce Cheek will signal each row of graduates when it's time to rise and assemble to the right of the stage. I'll ask the faculty representative from each of the respective programs to join me on stage to read the names as their graduates march. Our official photographer, Philip McDonald, will take a picture of the graduates with the program faculty. And this is really important. Families should feel free to take as many pictures as they need to, because this is important. We will pause so that you can. And so we are excited to have you participate in whatever way you need to. Once the diploma is received and the pictures are taken, the graduate will return to their seats on the opposite side. Take your time and watch your step. As a crucial note, both for graduates and families, this is involved in the clapping and cheering. Please cheer as loudly as you want. Do what you need to do. Celebrate this moment. Get it all out. This is a big day.
I'm going to announce the graduates in the Master of Arts in Liberal Studies program. I'll also mention those who are not here with us today. Pat Andre with a concentration in counseling and adult education. He's not here. He's playing professional basketball in Tokyo, so that's a good reason. Second, Ronnie Dempsey with a concentration in philosophy, sociology, and public policy studies in criminal justice and policing, and he has just moved to New York to take a consulting job there, so likewise a good excuse. Next we have Nora Edgar with a concentration in science, communication, and society. Melissa Evans with a concentration in diversity and inclusion in television production. Joseph Opoku Gakpo with a concentration in communicating agricultural development. Joseph is not here this evening, but he will be continuing at NC State in the fall, pursuing a doctorate in agricultural education. Next, Sydney Michelle Haley with a concentration in non-professional to professional job transitions and their impacts on job satisfaction and retention. Merida Mathis with a concentration in international politics with a focus on East Asia. Aina Wakila Muhammad with a concentration. With a concentration in race and disability. Bradley Sweeney with a concentration in leadership and coaching in sports. Karen Chalmers Thomas with a concentration in communications and social change. And finally, Victoria Ivanovich with a concentration in women's and gender studies.
I'm Jonathan Kramer. I represent Art Studies with my colleagues Allison Arnold and Tori Ralston. And we're very proud of our artists. Artists can be the soul of a civilization, I'm sure you all know. There is often talk about North Carolina State being a STEM university, and we are promoting it being a STEAM university, adding the arts to that menu. So without further ado, we'll start out with our film studies concentrations with Glenn Billups. Angelica Cruz Colon. Tydasia Davis. Melissa Downs. Emily Elliott. Kenji Fisher. Congratulations, guy. It's been a pleasure. Kristen Fisher. Cara Hoy. And Matt O'Brien. In music, we have John Stevens. And Adam Sumner.
In the theatre concentration, 3. One only. Lily Creel.
That's what I'm talking about right That's my sister!
Two more theatre. Grayson Ford. Ellie Hess.
So the visual arts students are next. Marley Boast. Khalil Harrison. Emma McQuiston. Jazz Sun. And Rishwanda Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. I am the director of the program in International Studies and also direct the Alexander Hamilton Scholars Program. Before you say anything, yes, I know I'm wearing sort of the wrong colors tonight. It's the only day of the entire year that I can get away with it. So, super happy to be here to present. We have 8 different concentrations in International Studies. We have students organized by concentration in alphabetical order, beginning with Madison Dietz. Gunnar Dunford. Tessa Musgrave. Alicia Honeycutt. Our next graduate is Caroline Moir. Aaliyah Bailey. Sarah Condon. Radhika Pal. The aforementioned Abdullah Antal. Emma Malecki, Kyra Barrier, Tayaba Shudri, Eric DePampa, Hannah Gilmore. Myra Gonzalez Gutierrez, Lindsay Hannon. Jessup Hobbs. Rose Hood. Ashlyn Joseph. Jordan Kellerman. Haras Khatri.
Congratulations, Boros!
Ji-Yu Kim. Noemi Mariscal. Stephanie McIntyre, Shivani Mehta. Julie Penalosa, Jake Phillips, Celia Revi, Anastasia Shimoniak, Dominic Venuti, Taylor Willis. Emily Wilson. Pooja Kansaira. Miranda Olson. Lacey Peterson. Jake Petrillo, Sarah Stay. Summer Tonneson.
I'm pleased to present the graduates of Science, Technology, and Society Bachelor of Arts degrees. First, Zakia Asme Brooks. Tyler Pucci. Gabriel Carrion. Rochelle Fanay Connor. Jessica Elizabeth Creech. Grace Densmore. Jada Griffin. Cortland Hardy. Douglas Unitas. Meg Nicole Pugsley. Andrew Ryan. Sky Sarek. Carlos Saura Baena. Austin Williamson. He is none of those people. He is, however, the first graduate in our Bachelor of Science, Science, Technology, and Society degree, Morgan Ashley. Amni Bazan. Cameron Bernhardt. Preston Chavis Bowditch II. We expect each of our graduates to do that. Jenna Chitlow. Elikim Dodor. Kylie Duty. Catherine Epler. Olivia Fernelius. Oh. Did you not hear me? I may have not been heard, I apologize. Kaylee Duty. Catherine Epler. Olivia Fernelius. Parker Ingraham. Hunter Jordan. Luke Lodge. Chris McCabe. Caroline Grace McMillan. Brooke Savannah Patterson. Emily Pender. Hannah Soder. Blake Spell. Emily Stroud. Elise Tikala. Colin Townsend. Evan Vanovich. Kaylee Wachter. Caleb Matthew Watson.
Pleased to announce the graduates in Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. Taylor Tuttle, Ray E. Ward.
I'm pleased to be announcing the graduates in the self-design major. We have both a Bachelor of Arts as well as a Bachelor of Science, and these students develop their own interdisciplinary concentrations, so I will also read their concentrations as well. So first, the students with the Bachelor of Arts, Carly Michelle Brown, with a concentration in business applications of sustainable development. Next, we have Catherine Elizabeth Clements with a concentration in maternal and child health.
Hey, you're amazing!
Now we have our graduates in the Bachelor of Science. And first we have Lujane Al-Samara. With a concentration in scientific and societal dimensions of nutritional and public health.
We love you, Lujane!
Graham Ward Berman, with a concentration in global public health and social sciences. And finally, Emma Fazio, with a concentration in social and psychological factors in the delivery of healthcare services.
You are my sunshine!
Another hearty congratulations to the class of 2022. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone who worked so hard to make this day special. Thank you to our wonderful speakers who exemplify what we hope our students and grads and our faculty do in this world. Thank you to Philip McDonald for providing photography. And I'd like to take an extra special moment to thank Bruce Cheek, our Student Services Coordinator, for being here today and all the work he did. Thank you to the faculty for your leadership and your devotion to our students. And thank you to Dr. Rodney Washka for the beautiful music that we use for our ceremony. I want to close by reminding you that NC State's tradition of paying it forward began over 130 years ago when a group of leaders, all under the age of 30, wanted to change North Carolina And they did so by founding this great university. So as you leave the halls of NC State, I want you to remember that you too have a responsibility to our future. The students that come after you are counting on you for support. They're counting on you to become an active member of the alumni community. NC State will continue to be great if each of you pay it forward. I challenge each of you to support your alma mater and this program, both financially and then more importantly, by giving your time. When you return to help mentor and guide the next generation of students, think of the lives you can change. The truth is, tuition and state funding only get us part of the way. Chancellor Woodson is fond of saying that we can be a good university on state funding, but we can be a great university with support from alumni like you. I want to do one last thing. My former department head, the late Jonathan Acco, would ask all of the graduates to please stand. And then he'd ask you to turn around and thank the people who got you here. Okay, turn back around now. To our grads, go, be great, represent us well wherever you go. Go Pack. Families, please stay in your seats until the graduates have recessed.